You're listening to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses. Each week, you'll hear my thought-provoking conversations with Olympians, pro athletes, CEOs, elite coaches, best-selling authors, and other high performers to uncover their secrets to success. Get ready to be inspired each week when we talk about leadership, teamwork, work ethic, and more. Are you ready? Let's go. This week, my guest is Coach Herm Edwards. Herm is a former NFL player, former NFL and college football head coach, and a dynamic and entertaining ESPN TV personality. He is also one of the most sought-after corporate speakers on leadership, coaching, and success. We recently sat down to discuss his journey from undrafted free agent to a 10-year NFL playing career, which included 9 seasons with the Philadelphia Eagles, where he never missed a single game or practice. Herm and I also dove deep into his coaching career, which spans more than 30 years and includes head coaching jobs with the New York Jets, Kansas City Chiefs, and most recently, Arizona State University. He's one of just a few coaches in NFL history to lead 2 different teams to the playoffs in his first season as head coach. In our conversation, he shared actionable advice on achieving ambitious goals, why it's essential to bet on yourself, and how to lead with passion and consistency in good times and bad. Herm shared a powerful lesson about how to use basic fundamentals and little things to get back on track if things aren't going according to plan. You'll also hear Herm tell the story about his first NFL interception, which came against legendary quarterback Joe Namath. And he also shared a behind-the-scenes look at his now famous "You play to win the game" speech at a press conference in 2002. My conversation with Herm is filled with fantastic stories that will make you smile and timeless life lessons that will help you be the best at whatever you do. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Coach Herm Edwards. Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, Coach.
Thank you for allowing me to be on your show again. The last time we spoke, I think you reminded me, it was about 6 years ago.
We did. We spoke 6 years ago. It was so much fun. I was excited to do it again and explore even more of your story. Coach, this time I want to go way back. You were undrafted, but you went on to have a 10-year NFL career, including 9 seasons with the Eagles, where, if I'm not mistaken, you never missed a game or a practice. That's a remarkable story for somebody who was undrafted, according to conventional wisdom. So when you were undrafted and kind of looking at the odds stacked against you, what was your mindset? How did you move forward?
Well, first of all, when you're not drafted and obviously you feel like you had an opportunity to become drafted through your play in college football, it kind of is one of those sucker punches. You don't see it coming, but it's like, wow, how did this happen? And in the era that I played in college football, I believe there was 12 rounds. So there was a lot of rounds where you could draft a guy, right? And wasn't drafted. And it's probably because of my career in college. I started out at Cal Berkeley as a freshman, played up there, and then had a personality class with one of the coaches, and then ended up going to JC for a semester and playing at the junior college, the local junior college in my hometown, Monterey Peninsula Junior College, and would have to get an AA to go somewhere else. And Cal convinced me to come back. The coach that I had the personality clash with moved to another position. I had a new coach and went back my junior year and played and they had a pretty good year. It was all Pac-8 then. It was the Pac-8 then, believe it or not. And things seemed to be going on in the right direction. And then the coach leaves and goes to San Francisco, and they bring back the coach that I had the personality clash with in the secondary. And next thing I know, I'm driving south to go to San Diego State. So I go to San Diego State and I get down there in the spring, and they have no scholarships available for the fall. So I'm actually going to school and working in the shipyards at night. So I missed that season, was eligible for spring because you had to sit out then, and started spring ball. And then from there, played my career at San Diego State, my final career, and then played in a couple all-star games. And, thought, hey, I got a shot. And people were saying he's going to get drafted. And lo and behold, I don't get drafted. I think I know why I didn't get drafted. I think maybe I was labeled one of those guys that have threatened authority. because I grew up in a military background. My father was a master sergeant in the war. He fought in the Korean War and World War II. The one thing he always taught me was you can always ask why. Because when you ask why, you're searching for information. Well, that's easy to say now, but back in the era that I grew up, you couldn't ask a coach why. That was taboo. And basically, if you were a black player, it kind of didn't come off good sometimes. And maybe I didn't ask why in the right way, but I was always searching for knowledge. And that was one of the issues I had with the coach. He thought I was threatening authority, and I really wasn't. I was just trying to learn what he was trying to teach us and trying to ask him, how does that fit for what we're doing, and kind of challenge him that way a little bit. And it didn't work out. So that might have been the rap on me a little bit. So lo and behold, I don't get drafted. Dick Vermeil recruited me out of high school when he was at UCLA, and I didn't go there, went to Cal. So then my journey starts, the draft's over. And it's funny because after about, the first day, I think it was the second and third round. And so phone doesn't ring. And so, okay. And then the next day started, was, 4, 5, 6, 7. So around the seventh round, I pick up the phone, I call an operator. I said, will you call this number back and see if the phone works?
That's great. I love it.
She called it, ding, I said, well, the phone works. So by the 10th round, I believe it was, look, I just left my apartment and went out and started working out. I said, you know what, I'm going to get an opportunity hopefully somewhere. And there was several teams that called me after the draft. San Diego Chargers were one of them, the Miami Dolphins, San Francisco, the Raiders, Philadelphia Eagles. And so then you would go to a camp right after the draft. They had these mini camps. And so the Miami Dolphins had a mini camp. Don Shula was the coach there, and Bobby Beathard, God bless him, was one of the guys that was there. He was the GM there and in scouting. And so I fly to Miami from San Diego. I could go to LA and fly to Miami. I go there and I work out for 2 days. And I'm the only guy that's in camp that hadn't signed a contract, because I had talked to Philadelphia prior to that. And they said, hey, you go down there, you can work out for them, but don't sign anything because we want you to come here. So I went, oh, okay. So I work out for 2 days. And then before I'm getting ready to leave, Coach Shula calls me in his office. And we became friends after this. It's really a funny story. And he starts talking to me. He says, Herm, he says, now, we want you to sign here. You're going to have an opportunity to play here. We'll give you every opportunity. And remember, back in the days that I played, it was 6 preseason games. And it was only 14 regular season games. The training camp was 2 months. And so he said, we really want you here. And so I got enough nerve up as a free agent coming out of college to look Coach Shula in the face and say, Coach, if you really wanted me, you could have drafted me. And he kind of looked at me and went, well, so I said, no, Coach, I promised Philadelphia I'd come work out for them. And I want to keep my options open. So I didn't sign. I get on a plane. I fly back to LA, get off the plane, and Carl Peterson's at the airport. Get back on another plane and fly to Philadelphia. Their workout is the next day. So I fly all the way to Philadelphia. And then I work out there for 2 days. I end up signing with the Eagles. And then the story goes, we get into training camp, and first preseason game we play, I'm a starter. I end up going through the roster and, just working my way up. I can remember coming in camp. So, and there was 22 defensive backs. At that time, remember, camp was almost 2 months. There was 125 guys in training camp back in those days. It was real football. I mean, it was like tackle football. I mean, you practice 2.5 hours in the morning, you practice 3 hours in the afternoon, because we had all these guys. And so, Dick was a taskmaster. He was going to have a tough football team and all that. And so I'm sitting there, and in the second day of practice, I asked a veteran guy by the name of John Outlaw. I said, how many defensive backs make the team? Right. And he looks at me, he says, 8, rookie. And I go, who's the other 7? And he looks at me, he said, what'd you say? I said, who's the other 7? I said, because I'm not going home. I said, I ain't going home, man. And he looked at me, he says, oh, okay. And I've told this many a times, Ron Jaworski gets there from the Rams. So we come in at the same time. But he had already been playing with the Rams. And the backup quarterback then is Roman Gabriel. And from practice, it's probably a half a mile walk. We were at Widener College where Billy White Shoes went to school. That's where we were practicing. And you'd have to walk from the locker room up this hill to the practice fields. And after the first day of practice, Roman Gabriel says, "Hey, Rook, you need to walk with me every day, and I'm going to talk to you about being a professional football player." And I looked at him and I said, wow. So I used to walk up the hill going to practice with Roman Gabriel. And he was basically giving me information and knowledge of how to be a professional football player. And it was the greatest walks I've ever had. And all through that, learning from him and understanding, and he was a quarterback. He's the backup quarterback. He wasn't a starter, but just he had been in the league, and the respect I had for that man teaching me how to be a pro. And then I got my opportunity in the first preseason game, and I never missed a start, and I never missed a snap.
Coach, I love that story, and there's so much in there to unpack. I mean, I'm thinking about you in that shipyard way back in college.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about you at that practice or in that conversation with Dick Vermeil where you say, "Why didn't you draft me?"
No, that was it. Don Shula. Yeah.
Don Shula. And then I'm thinking about that conversation you had with the teammate where you said, who are the other 7 guys?
Right.
You asking why, which you learned from your father. Where else did that assertiveness and confidence come from in your mind?
Well, I was just, and I tell people this all the time, somewhere in life, the light has to come on in your brain that tells you this: don't be afraid to bet on you. You got to want to bet on you, regardless of what anybody else says, because it's your life. And then I think the next thing, and it's really hard, it's hard for people, and I ask this question a lot to people. I say, what is your purpose? Unless you understand your purpose, you really don't have a direction. And so I had a purpose. My purpose was real simple. I was going to be a pro football player. There ain't no doubt. That was my mindset in junior high school. Now, everybody has that mindset. I get it. But anything I had to do in my life growing up to become a professional athlete, I was going to do that. I was going to make that happen. I didn't know what it took to be a professional athlete. I didn't know the training. My thought was this. When I watched guys on television, I said, if you're a professional athlete, they don't smoke, they don't drink, all these other things that everyone else is doing, you can't do. This is my mind. They don't use bad language. This was the perception I had because I had never met a professional athlete. I just saw them on television. And that's what I assumed that. So growing up in junior high school and high school, I didn't cuss. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. I didn't do that. I said, because I want to be a professional athlete. And you can't do that. You got to go somewhere. You got to be able to sacrifice something. What are you willing to give up to get to where you're going? And for me, it was real simple. Okay, that's what it takes. And I'm going to work out. I'm going to play every sport with a ball in it. And I did. I was a dual athlete. I played everything. I was a good basketball player. Plus, some people are saying in my hometown, I was a better basketball player than a football player. But I just was willing to bet on myself. But not only that, I was willing to give up some things to say, hey, man, if I got to get this up to go here, I'm willing to do that. And that's what motivated me. And when I got an opportunity to play pro football and I stepped on the field, and I told Dick Vermeil and those guys, I said, look, I don't want to just make the team. I want to start. You say that as a rookie free agent. They look at you and say, what? And I go, oh, coach, I'm coming here to start. Bottom line, I said, all I want is an opportunity. I was granted that. And then you got to go do it. And to me, it's being available. Being available, man. And I tell people this, my life as a football player, from high school to college to professional football, I never missed a practice. And I never missed a start. Period. I was always available. This is always available. It's just, you got to be available. That's my job. I got to be available. And just the sure presence of being available every day, you'd be surprised. You wipe half the field out. You wipe half the competition out because they just can't be available. It's just too hard. And it's a mental thing. Was there times I was hurt? Yeah. I said, a hurt player can play. Injured player can't play. There's a difference between being hurt and injured. Hurt player can't play. I was fortunate. Never had anything bad happen to me, for the most part. But I was available. And in life, you have to be available. It's critical.
Coach, I'm curious. You were a great defensive back. You had 38 interceptions in your career, including 5 clutch ones in the playoffs. But your first NFL interception
Yeah, go ahead.
Your first NFL interception, it was off of Joe Namath. Take me through that. And more broadly, like, how do you approach, because I think this applies to football, of course, and sports in general, but anything. How do you approach trying to take away someone else's best weapon, best advantage, right? Because I think that's, a big part of being a defensive back.
Yeah, it is. First of all, it's understanding your strengths and then also understanding your weaknesses. Now, some people are just gifted so much. They don't have a lot of weaknesses. I wasn't the fastest guy. I didn't run 4.4, right? I wasn't one of them guys. But what I was smart and I understood angles and I had really good eyes to read what was going on, formations and splits of the receiver and down and distance and situation. So I almost, as a corner, played quarterback because I was a thinker.
Okay.
I was a thinker. And I said, and you watch film and so that kind of helped me. But going back to Joe Namath, it was interesting because I watched him win a Super Bowl when I was sitting on my couch at home. And he runs off the field and he does that, right? And, he said, that's Joe Namath. I'm in high school then, and I go, wow, okay, Joe Namath. Lo and behold, my rookie year, we walk into the Coliseum in Los Angeles, and Joe Namath is the quarterback. And I'm going, man, I'm playing against Joe Namath. You believe this? I couldn't believe it. I said, man, I'm playing against Joe Namath. And so Harold Jackson was the receiver. And after about the second series, I'm playing right corner. And they come out, and all of a sudden I see Joe get down, and all of a sudden he checks the play. And he reads the coverage that is man-to-man, is man-free. I'm man-to-man on Harold Jackson. And they're right about on the minus 40. And that's the hot zone. That's between the 40s. They're going to launch on every once in a while. And it's first down. And I'm going, okay. And he's got Harold Jackson out here. And I see him check. I see him checking. He's looking and he's making his, and I go, oh, I said, they're going to run a go route. In my mind, I said, they're going to run a go route. And I'm a rookie on Harold Jackson. I said, why wouldn't you? That's what I'm thinking. They're going to test me eventually here. So it was about the third series. And sure enough, they run a go route. And I'm running back there with Harold. The ball's up, and I intercept the ball, and I come down with it. And Harold kind of passed me on the helmet and said, good job, Rook. And I said, thanks, and I kind of go off the field. So the crazy part is the game's over, and we're walking back up the tunnel in the Coliseum, and I have the ball in my hand. This is my first NFL interception. So I'm talking to some of the veterans. I said, hey, you think if I go up to Joe Namath, he'll sign the ball? And they said,
oh, man.
Don't do that, Rook. Don't do that. And so I didn't do it. And it's ironic how life kind of goes in a circle. When I became the head coach of the Jets, Joe Namath came over to the facility, congratulated me. We started talking. He says, oh, I know who you are. And I said, yeah, Joe. I said, you don't realize, man, I was going to ask you to sign my ball for me. We started laughing.
That's great. It's all full circle.
Yeah.
So that's a great segue, Coach. You talked about getting into coaching.
Yes.
What were some of the things that you did to ready yourself for that transition from player to, coach?
Well, I was always a guy that was seeking information and would always get with our coaches and just try to figure out how do you do things, how do they organize their schedule, stay late and figure out kind of what they were doing. And then from there, when I got out of football, I was very fortunate. As soon as I retired, Claude Gilbert, who was my coach at San Diego State, was at San Jose State. So I'm going to I was home in California. I lived on the Monterey Peninsula, and the junior college that I attended, I went over there and I said, hey, look, I want to learn how to coach. And they were ecstatic. They said, okay, come on, we're going to bring you on board. You can be, I never coached in my life, and I was good. So I told them that day, the next day, so you come the next day. So I go to practice the next day. I go in the morning, and coach looks at me and says, hey, you can't come out today. You need to go to San Jose. I said, San Jose? He said, yeah, Claude Gilbert wants to meet with you. So I get in my car, and I drive up to San Jose. I go home to the office. Claude Gilbert's there. He says, how you doing? He shakes my hand, gives me a big hug. He says, I want to hire you as a secondary coach. And I said, really? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. I had no coaching experience at all, right? And he hired me. He gave me a chance, man. And it was like, I was very fortunate to have a guy that trusted me, thought that, I had the ability to coach. I had a good coaches, had a good coordinator, but he gave me a chance. And I kind of cut my teeth there. And that's when my coaching career started, and stayed there for 3 seasons. And then the Kansas City Chiefs, Carl Peterson, who was the GM in Philadelphia, was with the Chiefs. He became the GM, and Bill Walsh program has been started. And so they invited me to come in the summer to be on the staff. And it's ironic because Tony Dungy was there, and Tony and myself came out of college at the same time together. And we were, we played against each other in all-star games. That's how we met. He played for about 4 or 5 years, started coaching. And I kept playing. And then he ends up there, and Marty Schottenheimer's the head coach, and Bill Cowher's the defensive coordinator, and Tony's the secondary coach, and Bruce Arians is a running back coach. We got a bunch of really good coaches there. And so I go there in the summer and stay there for 2 weeks, and then go back to San Jose and coach my 3rd season. And then I get a call when the season's over with, and they say, hey, look, we'd like you to come back to Kansas City, and we're going to put you in the scouting department, and also you can help with the coaching. You could be under Tony. And I went, oh, okay. And they were smart in this sense. They knew eventually, and Carl knew this, Bill Cowher and Tony Dungy were going to leave and become head coaches. And Marty understood that too. And so he wanted to get somebody in place that if that left, that he would have a guy where he could have a staff that he was grooming.
Yeah,
I was kind of the guy, right? I was kind of the guy, and it ended up happening. Tony went to Minnesota. Bill goes to Pittsburgh to be the head coach. Tony's the coordinator in Minnesota now. I fall into being a secondary coach, right? And that's how my coaching career started in Kansas City, as a scout, part-time coach. And then when Tony leaves, a coach. And it's kind of ironic because Tony, when we were in those rooms talking together, he was teaching me how to be a secondary coach and all that kind of stuff. And when he got the job in Tampa, one of his first phone calls, he's calling me and he's going, hey, and I'm in Kansas City. Can you imagine? We had Joe Montana then, and we got Christian Okoye, but we got Marcus Allen, and we had a really good team. We were in the playoffs every year. I lost to Buffalo in the championship game when Joe got knocked out, and so we're always winning. And Tony calls me and says, hey, look, you know what we talked about? And when I was back there, I go, yeah. He says, well, you got to come down here. And I go, oh. And I'm telling him, I said, Tony, I said, to Tampa? And I go, man, he said, we're winning here, man. He says, Herm, you got to come. And I go, you're right. I got to come because, and so I go down there. He hires me as the assistant head coach. Lovie Smith is the linebacker coach. Rod Marinello is the defensive line coach. So he's got a pretty good staff that he's grooming. So I was the assistant head coach and the secondary coach. And Tony, the 5 years I stayed there, basically was training me to become a head coach. He trained me to be a head coach. And I had opportunities to leave after my 2nd year or 3rd year to go places to be coordinators. He says, no, don't go nowhere. He said, you sit right here. And I was patient and said, you're going to be a head coach. And lo and behold, it happened for me, for Lovie and Rod. I was the first one off his staff to leave. And then when I leave, Mike Tomlin comes in there and takes my spot, right? So he had a way of training coaches and building coaches up. And then I go to New York, obviously, and, whatever happens, and then go to New York and I get traded back to the Chiefs. It was ironic. It was all crazy. And then I went on television for a while, then went to Arizona State, and now I'm back on television. So
it's a wonderful story. A coaching career that spans over 30 years. And Herm, I was thinking about, you referenced our conversation that we had about 6 years ago. I was thinking about you. I think about that conversation a lot because I learned a ton. But I was thinking in particular about a piece of that conversation when everything went virtual during the pandemic and everybody was on Zoom. You talked to me about when you're a leader, you need to be visible. And you told me that you were walking around locker rooms, you were walking around training rooms, you were saying hello to players. You would go talk in person instead of making phone calls if you could.
Yes.
And I'm curious. I mean, obviously, even today, you are one of the most sought after speakers to corporations and businesses and teams. And how do you reconcile like where we are today, where a lot can be done virtually? We're meeting virtually right now.
Yes.
But as a leader, you got to be visible. How do you navigate that?
I think you have to make sure at times you want to be visible. You want to be able to touch people. And I know it's cost friendly to do it this way. I get that. But sometimes in my opinion, the people that you work with, or they need to feel you. They need to feel you. It's a different conversation when you're sitting across from somebody or you're in front of the audience. There's a different energy, and I do enough of these where you try to project it and it's good and it's fun. I just came off a thing for Comcast, right? And one of the times I talked to Comcast was earlier, about a month ago, 2 months ago. It was in Arizona. It was live. It was with 300 employees, right? This one was a virtual one, so it was a little bit different. But I always feel better when I can feel the room and the room can feel me. I think I have a way of projecting myself, even though I'm on a screen. And television has helped me with that, to be quite honest. But even in television, what's happened now, and you see it for the people I work for, the worldwide leader, there's times when I have a camera in my house, I do it from my home. And it's okay. But when I go back to Bristol, which I'm going back this week, I'll be in the studio Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday this week. Even though I got to travel 3,000 miles from California to Bristol, and it's not one stop. It's a long day.
Yeah.
But I like being in studio on the floor with the people I'm working with. There is a different energy. But I think you got to be able to do both, obviously, because, as I said, it's much more convenient. You have a greater access when you can do it this way, right? I mean, you can see more people, you can touch more people, but it's different. And that's just me. I'm a people person. I just like to be around people. I just do. I get energy from that. I like to look people in the eye, right? So that's just me.
Coach, I'm curious. You alluded to it earlier. I remember we spent some time 6 years ago talking about it as well, balancing the concept of setting goals and taking action.
Yeah.
How do you find the right balance between creating a goal for yourself? Earlier you said, I want to be a pro football player.
Yeah.
How do you balance a goal with action?
Well, I think it's how do you organize your time? And I've always said this, regardless of who you are, where you live, what you do, everyone gets the same amount of time every day. We all get the same amount of time.
Very true.
They don't say, well, if you live in this state, no. It's everyone gets the same. And how you allocate your time, and it always goes back to importance. What's important? How do you I always tell people this, how do you organize your day? Just how do you organize your day, right? I'm a guy that writes things down. I go, okay, before I go to bed, I go, these are the things I got to do tomorrow. And I put them in importance. I put them from 1 to 5 to 1, whatever it may be. And I do it that way. Bum, 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 bum. Okay, this is what I got to do. This is the time I got to invest in what I do, my job or whatever. And then there's another list of things just for me to keep me whole. See, you got to help yourself too. Because if not, you always feel like you're doing it for somebody else. You got to set in your schedule because you only got so many hours in a day. What are you doing for yourself today? For you. You got to have some, I would say, you got to have some you.
And for you, Coach, that's exercise, family.
Right now, 4:30 in the morning, bam, I'm working out. I'm up and at 'em. No one can bother you. It's quiet. And it's just your time to get your thoughts together. For me, it's my time to get my thoughts together to really attack the day. And what's on today's agenda that I got to get done? Well, to me, it's like little mini goals. Like I always say this, a goal without a plan is a wish. I'll say it again. A goal without a plan is a wish. So what's your plan? You got a goal, but what's the plan? Because if not, you're just wishing.
I love it, Coach. A goal without a plan is a wish. As we get ready to wrap up, I'm curious. I mean, as a leader, as a coach, as a person, you're constantly faced with tough decisions.
Yes.
Times when you have to use data, times when you have to use instinct and feel. Is there one decision or path you pursued in your career that maybe at the time you wrestled with a little bit, but was like something that you just had conviction about? We've got to do this, or we've got to not do that you feel really proud of?
Well, yeah, there's one, and I'll say this, it's interesting because I'll go back to my coaching days. When we were in New York, our first year, we get to the playoffs. And the second year, we got a really good team. I mean, we got a shot at this, right? And we start 2-5. And it's like, wow. So this is my second year of being a head coach. We're 2-5. And I'm like, whoa. And you're in New York, you're 2-5. Woo, woo. They're coming now.
Yeah, they're saying a few things.
Shows are fired up, man. And everybody, all the outside noises and everybody is telling, you need to do this. You need to change that. You need to go here. You need to go that. And they're change the coach, change the coordinator. You need the best player. So I get before the media and they're saying, this and that. So this is the one where you play to win the game came out.
Okay.
Right? This is my second year there. And I say that on a Tuesday when the players aren't in. And, it went viral. It went crazy. And I said it because the question was almost posed, are the players going to quit? Well, look, for me, it wasn't so much about the players. It was about the question of quitting. When you sign on to do something, you can't quit. That ain't part of the deal. You don't get to tap out. That's my life. You don't get to tap out. When you start something, you got to finish it. It doesn't matter what the score is. It doesn't matter. You have to finish. And so the reason I went off was because of that. It's like, are you kidding me? So anyway, the players come in on Wednesday, and I'm getting ready to have this meeting with the players. And Chad Pennington is sitting in the audience, and I walk up to the podium, and he stands up, and he says, Coach, we heard what you said. And I said, you guys good? And he says, Coach, we're good. And I said, I don't need to talk to you. We're going to the meetings and we're going to practice. We win the division. Now, the coaching part of it was this. I told the coaches, you know what we're going to do? So what we're going to do, Coach? We're going to go back to basic football. We're going to go back to basic football. We're going to have 2 running plays. We're going to have about 4 or 5 concepts on first down, second down, third down. On defense, we're going to play this. That's what we're going to do. We're going to get back to fundamentals. And I told Coach, all I want you to teach in practice is fundamentals. Just fundamentals. Just fundamentals. We're not changing the offense. We're not benching players. I'm not firing coaches. We're going to get back. We've lost our way. We got to get back to the foundation of who we are, right? And that's what we did. We just kind of got back and everybody kind of got in the groove. And all of a sudden, then you win a game. And all of a sudden, you win another one. And before you know it, you're going, And we end up winning the division. Don't lose sight of who you are. What I'm saying. In the midst of all the craziness, you only can be you. You can't be anybody else. But you got to understand what makes up you. And for me, it's always going back to the details of the little things that maybe we got away from. And the players bought into it. And God bless them and the coaching staff. And we just went on our run and found a way to get it turned around and won a division.
This is all pure gold, Coach. I mean, it's such an important message to not forget who you are, get back to the basics. Simple stuff matters. Little things matter and can make all the difference.
They do, and sometimes we want to complicate things and we say, we got to do that. We got to do it. No, we don't. Let's just go back to fundamentals and let's go have some fun doing this. And all of a sudden, and I think how you lead in moments of pressure and everything's not going, everybody's looking at you. They're watching your mannerisms. They're seeing if you change as a coach all of a sudden, you become something different. I was never different. They looked at me and they kept saying, Coach, you good? I said, I'm good. And then after a while, the players started saying, Coach, good, we good. And they knew I wasn't. They said, Coach ain't going to panic. He's just going to keep coaching and he's not going to call players out. He's not going to belittle anybody. Yeah, we do. We became more focused. We became more intent in what we were doing, and the players bought into it. And the key was this. You can say all that, but then you got to go win. And then we're able to win. And then it just took over. And then we just came this team that was like, okay, we're rolling, man.
I have learned so much from you, Coach, from our conversation a number of years ago, from our conversation today. The only thing I hope is that our next conversation is in person so I can feel that energy in the room, Coach. But I think of all the lessons that I've learned from watching you and from talking to you, finish what you started.
Yes.
You said that earlier, finish what you started. And I have had so much fun talking to you and learning from you. And as I like to say every week on this podcast, we celebrate tarp pullers, people who do the little things, who pull the tarp.
Yep.
And you, Coach Herm Edwards, are a tarp puller.
Yeah.
Thank you for all that you do, all the wisdom that you share with the world every single day. And we'll have to do this again soon in person.
In person and not 6 years from now.
That's right. That's right, Coach. Thank you for spending some time with me this week, and we'll talk again soon.
My pleasure, brother. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Twitter at Andrew H. Moses. That's Andrew H. Moses. And be sure to sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Today is a great day to pull the tarp. I am rooting for you. See you next time.